What do they want to see in the market? What will they pay for? What will they not pay for? Those are the very first step in designing a new product. We have had to do all of these things manually. Not only does it take so long,
Yes.
it requires a lot of different people with a lot of different expertise.
Every single thing that we needed to know that we would have known to ask, Axio gave to us. So the fact that Axio was able to provide that without us even having to prompt it was also really reassuring to us as experts to say it will truly help those that are just starting off on this journey and not really knowing all the questions to ask.
Welcome to the Accio Playbook. In this episode, we are diving into trend analysis and data-driven creativity. We will discuss best practices in how to read the market, interpret what's next, and then turn that knowledge into products that actually sell. I'm your host, Ziwei Chen, and joining me today are Erin and Jackie, the powerhouse duo behind the Sourcing Gals. Together, they bring decades of hands-on experience in merchandising and product development at multi-billion-dollar companies, along with the perspective of running their own brands and businesses. Hi, Erin. Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Sway. Thanks for having us.
We're so happy to be here with you.
I am so excited for today's topic. I know that we are talking about trends. Our title is Data-Driven Trends, the Human Crafted Design. So just to kick off, I would love to hear from you based on your experience. Why does this matter? Or what are the opportunities and challenges with it that you have seen?
So, trend is really the very tip top of the fashion world. It's going to inform and motivate and guide everything that you bring to market. And even if it's a product that you don't think is inherently trendy, whether it's fashion trend or market trends or purchasing trends, there is a level of trend research that must go in to every product that comes to market. Now, we work in fashion, so we like to follow the fashion trends, and those things can be really arduous and it can be very time consuming because you are looking at runway, you're looking at magazines, you're looking at other high end designers, you're looking at street style, and you're doing all of these things and then trying to determine with your own customer what's relevant, what do they want to see in the market, what will they pay for, what will they not pay for, what do they love aspirationally but wouldn't buy. And those distinguishing factors are the very first step in designing a new product.
And you have to think about trend as well. As a manufacturer, you have something called a lead time, right? So it's not as if you can see something and have it on your website the next day. There are months and months of development that go into producing a product. So the trend piece comes in regards to where is your customer on that curve? Are they an early adopter? Are they going to want to push fast fashion? Or are they going to want to see it in the market first and then you deliver it and they're already comfortable with it? So understanding where your customer is a part of that, but then also layering in your production lead time is another really important piece to know that when that product actually arrives that you're hitting the right timing for your customer. If not, there can be lost sales. There could be markdowns, right? If the trend has passed and you're delivering it 3 months afterwards, if you're a fast fashion customer, that could be a problem. Or if you're too far ahead of that trend curve and your customer's not ready for it, that product might not be ready to sell and be adopted by them. So there's a sales and margin component piece as well when it comes to inventory and understanding that salability when it comes to trend also.
So, a lot of larger companies will have full teams devoted to this. All of the research that goes into determining the exact right point that their customer should be buying into our product idea. And then smaller companies just like tend to go on gut or copy what's in the market, which is a huge risk because if you are making a move on a fashion strategy when something's already in the market, you're likely behind. And then once it comes to you, it'll sit in your warehouse and collect dust, and you will have lost money.
And then the other thing that can happen is you can be trying to take a trend and the translation of that trend can sometimes be really difficult, right? If you're looking at especially high end or what we're going to talk about today is children's jewelry. So, right, you're going to be looking at that aspirational, probably older customer. Maybe it's on TikTok, maybe it's even on Runway. But how do you take that and make it work for a 12-year-old girl? Like that can be very challenging and take some real skill and finesse. And so we'll talk about today how Axio is really helping change the game when it comes to things like this.
I think there's already so much to unpack. You just mentioned that we have an example about children's jewelry. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how you would approach in catching the trends, synthesizing them, and then turning them into ideas that work for a business.
Yeah, what's great is that this is actually a real life example that we did with a client of ours. So, to actually bring it to life, I'm going to let Erin actually talk about what we put into Axio, what we asked for, and then we'll go through all the amazing feedback that we got from there and how it affected us as business owners and how we took next steps with it.
So, for this particular client, it was actually a really interesting challenge because they were already working in women's jewelry and hadn't yet delved into the teen or tween market. So, they came to us as the design provider and said, what should we be making for this tween brand? Along with what we said earlier, like my gut says we should be going in this direction. But as a new venture for this client, we really needed to provide some very strategic and researched analysis of what we should be going after in that market segment because it was new. It wasn't something that we had been doing for multiple seasons and we're just like reiterating on a strategy we already have. We're developing a new strategy. So at the top of that strategy, I wanted to find out okay, who's our age range? We determined that our age range is going to be from about 8 to 12, 8 to 13. And then what do we want to offer this age range? We want jewelry. Great. Okay. And then do we want it to hit a middle market or do we want to hit like very entry level pricing or very high level pricing? We determined that's going to be like lower entry level market. And so we also had some brands that we really loved and that from an aspirational standpoint, but those brands were again women's brands. They were not teen or tween brands. So we had to take all that information and distill it down. And like we talked about earlier, that likely in previous iterations of this exercise would have meant days, hours, multiple people, full teams, scouring the market, going out and shopping, looking at runway, looking at street style, looking on Instagram, looking on other stores' websites, and trying to piece together this strategy because we're filling a market that's not necessarily out there in a big way, which is great from an opportunity standpoint for the client. But it means that on our end, it just requires a higher level of analysis and a higher level of kind of intuitive design as well.
So, truly, what we asked Axio was quote, I want to create a girls' jewelry line for young tweens between 7 and 12 years old. Please help us identify current trends for this age group, find suitable jewelry products, and recommend manufacturers who can produce them. And then we gave a couple aspirational brands to Erin's point that we were using as reference points. That was all we put in. And the data that we got out, the findings that we received back were truly mind blowing. So we're going to talk about a couple of those real quickly here. So first, Erin kind of mentioned it, the market segment that we call it the competitive landscape. So something that would have taken our team hours, days to research, Axio literally gave back to us in minute. We'll show that here in a bit, but it was amazing to be able to understand the price point that we wanted to service this customer at. And really, we could tell that Axio was understanding it by the information that they gave back to us, just by, again, that very simple prompt that we had put in. The other thing was really making sure that the trend can translate to actual product. So, again, something that is a challenge a lot of times when you're taking these aspirational trends or seeing things in the market or down the runway, can it really translate that into tangible products that we can sell to a tween girl? And again, the data that came back was amazingly helpful and very actionable. It wasn't conceptual, it was true tactical information that we were getting back that we can utilize.
And I think that in a world before Axio, this would have taken the design team a pretty long time. And there would have been a lot of back and forth between the design team and the leadership team saying, okay, how do we iterate this trend for younger girls? And how do we build an assortment around it? And how do we know that the materials and the designs that we're using are not only cost appropriate, like Jackie said, age appropriate, but also compliant? We're talking about a younger age group here. So the materials used have to be compliant with standards in the US that can be sold to kids.
The compliance piece, again, was something that we lightly touched on in our prompt, but what came back was fully vetted factories that have history in that compliance, that understand that segmentation of the market, and even giving us the testing requirements and things we need to look for. Hypoallergenic metals. I mean, again, we weren't asking for all this information. We wanted to keep it high level to see how deep would Axio go. And then with a little bit of back and forth communication with Axio, we were able to garner so much information way deeper than and drilling down way deeper than we were, again, even expecting for it to go.
And I think that these are all things we would have normally done. And in past projects with this client, we have had to do all of these things manually. And the problem with that is that not only does it take so long,
Yes.
it requires a lot of different people with a lot of different expertise. And there's a lot of room for error and there's a lot of room for disagreement, I would say. And then when you're getting this information very holistically from a research tool that puts it all together, it takes out that element of like doubting and second guessing that can happen so much in this like design world because everything's so subjective.
And I'll also say, Erin and I have the experience. So we know what questions to ask, but we were also curious to say if we didn't know the questions to ask, would Axio actually come back and provide us information for a lot of our clients that are just starting their manufacturing journey? And so they don't understand that maybe children's jewelry has pretty complex compliance regulations, right? So the fact that Axio was able to provide that without us even having to prompt it was also really reassuring to us as experts to say, okay, this tool not only is helping us, but it will truly help those that are just starting off on this journey and not really knowing all the questions to ask.
That's a good point, Jackie, because a particular example from real life is that for children's jewelry, you actually cannot use crystal glass stones because they contain a high amount of lead. So you can't use like leaded crystal, which is very popular in the jewelry world. And our query did not specifically say, do not use crystallized lead stones, but every single thing that came back didn't use those inherently. Like it used materials, it used metals, it used products that we can very easily translate into children's jewelry. I think it would have been so frustrating. And I've actually worked with physical people who are designers in the past who have come back to me with a ton of products that are beautiful, but legally aren't compliant for kids. So I think that was like such a nice piece of the responses that we received were that they were so usable.
I love that story. And there's tons of detailed stories that you have mentioned about market sizing and all of the mock-ups and stuff like that. So I would love to share the report with our audience so they can take a better look at what exactly the experience on Axel looks like, and then the specific areas where you felt like the Axel report was helpful.
Yes, let's do it.
Perfect.
So what you're seeing here is the interface for Axio. On the very left, it is the query. And then what Axio is going to do first is to build a plan based on your query. This is to make sure that Axio understand what exactly you're looking for and also gives you a chance to make any edits once you're happy with the plan, and you will click on a start now. And then Axio will get to work. And then you can go and grab a coffee, or at that time, you can also choose to take a look at all the activities that Axio will generate in real time to show you what kind of data it has crawled through, what the analysis are. And also there are various report, like milestone reports that you can take a look. And then after a few minutes, Axio will compile all these information into a comprehensive report.
So, as I mentioned, this would have been an exercise that we would have worked on as a team. I would have had my associates go out to stores, do competitive shopping, do a ton of online research to gather every category, every trend across multiple retailers. So, days, hours of time, let alone the analysis of the information that we find afterwards. But literally, Axio brought it here. And not only did they show us the price buckets, but they're pulling out the trends within the price buckets. So you can see the different items and categories and their ranges. So that information right there in a snapshot within minutes, super, super helpful for like top line data information. And then it dives into some of the actual trends below. So it's also doing the analysis for you too. What do these trends mean? How are they coming to market? What are the types of materials that you're using for it? So again, information that would have taken a team or a person hours and days, we're getting back in a matter of minutes. And then from this information the ability to continue to converse with them, right? If we wanted to drill down further, we could continue to do that. So, again, the information back, color preferences, material preferences, right? That's where that trend piece comes in as well. It's understanding what colors are making sense for that tween market. How are we taking what's happening at mass and bringing it down to this younger demographic? So it really got down into the nitty gritty details beyond even what we were asking for it.
And I think that the cool thing about this is that we were very intentionally a little bit vague and a little more of an umbrella question because we were breaking into a new category. We were exploring what's out there as a whole when it comes to tween jewelry. So if we scroll back up to that first table, it automatically broke down the buckets of what the product categories were. And we were like, okay, absolutely. These are the categories that we will then report back to our client on the main ideas that we should be covering for this analysis. So those really informed the further design analysis that was below, which was really helpful as well. So when we got even further down, you can see that trends, like the high level trends, and then how they really, yep, right there. Some key style moments. So this is really nice because it gives the overarching trend, like we were talking about earlier at the opening of the episode, that inform those product categories. So there could be a trend, personalized, let's say that one, that then informs earrings or informs bracelets or informs necklaces. So the product categories are a way to kind of slice and dice those trends, and those trends may fall into each one of those product categories differently. And so what I found so impressive and interesting about the way that this report was laid out is that then we saw visual representations of how each one of those key style moments fell into the product categories. So we saw these bubble necklaces, which are super popular, but we know that this is for a younger market. So the mock-ups we got were a beautiful ombre, which is not something we're really seeing out there, but would definitely resonate with a tween girl. And then the enamel charms. It talked about charms being such a big fashion statement. So it shows us charms in necklaces and earrings and bracelets. And so for each of those product categories and each of those style takeaways, we're able to very easily fill in the gaps. And this is where, and for us, we had a really great experience because the first half of this report, we're able to utilize for the client. We're able to say, hey, here's what the market says. Here's what we are going to do for you. The second half of this report is where we were able to work internally with our design team and say, here's what we need designs against. Obviously, we're not going to use mock-ups for the client, but we are going to use these with our own design team to say, this is what we're going after. Let's put our spin on this. So just the title of this podcast is a very telling way of how we would use this. The trends are data driven, but we will give them to our design team and we will handcraft our iterations of these designs.
And I think also, typically when we work with clients and customers, a lot of times you're pulling swipe, we call it. So inspiration, Pinterest images, images from, social media, and then maybe some CAD designs with your hand drawings before when we're just trying to get the mood across before we're even kicking it off to our designers. But we were able to actually utilize some of these AI generated lifestyle images to actually help the customer understand how this really looks like in true real life. Here is your target customer. Here is how this bracelet, this jewelry, these earrings, this personalization can come to life. So I really think it helped it make such an easier selling point
Yes.
to our client to see it in actual form versus seeing, for example, a charm necklace on a 42-year-old woman and us trying to explain to them how this actually translates down to a 9-year-old girl, right? So it was actually bringing to life the trends and the ideas in a much more realistic and achievable way for the client to get their head wrapped around it. So I think the image generation too, for us to be able to use from a trend perspective and just again helping take the client along the journey was really, really helpful.
Yeah. And that's something that's a huge financial commitment to companies, whether it's us or past companies we've worked for, is that when you have to put together a presentation and you have to design and put together images and videos and lifestyle for a full presentation, but yet you don't have that customer's buy-in yet. So you're spending all of this money to get a customer buy-in, and then, maybe they want to go a different direction. So these images were fantastic for talking to the customer, getting buy in on certain trends. And then we implement with our team, and we have lost no income on the front end of getting this project.
So I can also see that you have had lots of follow-up questions that also we encourage all of our users to do as well. And wonder if there's anything else that maybe you want to highlight.
Yeah, I think this was a really great example of when we did present the trend to the client, we love this asymmetrical charm trend. And so I went back in to Axio and we iterated more on that trend and how that trend can distill down into different styles. So you'll have some that are like cute and colorful and charmy, and then we'll go further down and things will be a little bit more neutral and a little bit more elegant. And so it enables us to offer a wider range of that one trend based on feedback we had from our client that we wanted to go into a little deeper.
Yeah,
I
so I
think
just think again, these pictures helped bring that trend that we got from the data from Axio, bring it to life. And so to your point, Zoe, about being able to fast track, it is about speed, right? Like it is always about speed, especially when it comes to fashion and product development. Product development is a long process. So if we can cut the timeline down, that lead time on the front end, the conceptual piece, and move so much faster, our client's going to get to that product that much quicker as well.
And certainly it was very, it had that human touch because I brought in my 9-year-old daughter to look at these mock-ups and tell me which ones were her favorite. And she was super excited about them. So it really, it's just not only was it fast and it helped our process, but it hit the nail on the head when it came to trend too.
in this experience, is there anything else that maybe you would like to highlight?
Yeah, I think on the back end too, right? We're talking about trend and the client, the front end of it. But at the end of the day, these have to come to real life. They need to move into production. So, what I think was also great was that Axio came back to us with factories, approved, vetted, compliant factories that could actually help execute these products. And so, having that information as well as your next step, and not only it's their ratings, right? Every single thing that we needed to know that we would have known to ask Axio gave to us. So again, I go back to the person that doesn't know always what to ask and how this tool can really help guide you in regards to taking that trend idea, taking that product idea, and then actually connecting you with a supplier who's already doing it or a version of it, right? So I think that was also a really great bonus at the end of it was that, by the way, here's the suppliers that we think are a great fit based on what we served you.
That has been an awesome conversation. I learned a lot. I will highly recommend you to try it out on Axio and see how you can get to answers or options faster and make those decisions more confidently with both the data driven trends and also your input as a human crafted design.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you. Have a great day.